And that's P3.
Fuck's sake. Wait, why do these guys not move? I'm in a fast lap. Fucking dickheads.
A hiss and a bark. Daisy, the diesel rail car, is very different from the other engines. For one, she is a diesel rail car, a fact she rarely let anyone forget. But that was not all. Daisy was much longer than the small tank engines and tram on Thomas's branch line, so she didn't fit in the engine shed. This, however, suited her well, and instead she would sleep in the carriage shed with Annie, Clarabelle and Henrietta. And this arrangement suited them well. But one day, as Daisy sat at the river station, she saw Thomas coming in with a coach behind Annie and Clarabelle. It was longer than them and looked fancier too.
My, Thomas! Seeing sense at last and getting some proper coaches?
Daisy laughed rudely. Annie and Clarabelle were most hurt.
I would never!
Thomas huffed. This is my special coach. It's part of Gordon's Express and my branch trains. However, Thomas continued sheepishly, the points are jammed in the yard, so I had to bring it back with me. He paused with a smug look on his face. Good thing you kept the space warm for it in the carriage shed, he laughed. Daisy was speechless, but that didn't last long.
You can't put it there. Where will I sleep?
She hissed. Oh, but I can. You'll have to sleep outside, Thomas chuckled as he puffed off, leaving Daisy at a loss for words. As night fell, Daisy oiled up to the shed sulkily. Percy joined Thomas in his teasing, but Toby was more sympathetic. It'll be cold out tonight, he warned softly. Daisy shuddered. I know, he smiled warmly. Let's play a game. My fireman told me about one that people play where they have to guess what object you are, once you give them some hints. Thomas just scoffed. I already know what object I am, he said flatly. That finally brought a smile to Daisy's face. Well, let's try it anyway, Toby laughed. Oh yes, now. I like lots of attention from the passengers. I purr loudly in the station, and I never listen to what I'm told. Sounds like Daisy to me, Thomas laughed. Daisy pouted. It's the station master's cat, Percy butted in innocently, before further arguments could occur. Correct, Toby laughed. Your go, Thomas, Toby called, but Thomas wasn't listening. Now you mention it, Toby, he began with a cheeky look in his eye. Daisy really is just a big pussycat. What came next I shall not repeat, but the words that flew from Daisy's mouth shut the whole shed up for the night. The next day, however, Thomas would not let up. As Daisy rolled out past the platform, he spotted some oil dripping from her filler cap. He called out cheekily, Oh, Daisy, are you not house-trained? He chuckled. Daisy ignored him and rolled off to collect the milk van. Even pulling that dirty thing was better than listening to Thomas, but that only made the teasing worse. As she backed down into the dairy siding, Thomas called out once more, Cats do love milk, don't they? Daisy just went red in the face and raced off with the van before he could say any more. At first, Percy and Toby thought it was a fun joke, but as the days went on and the special coach left the yard, allowing Daisy to return to the carriage shed, Thomas persisted. Daisy wasn't her usual self. She wouldn't talk to anyone, not even to boast, and she kept away from the other engines. Toby grew worried, but he could never find a way to talk to Daisy without her running off. A few days later, he put together a plan and whispered it to his driver. We'll do it tonight, the driver agreed. Toby was at the quarry with Henrietta, ready to pick up the workman. He had just set off when he came to a sudden halt over the point at the quarry entrance. "What's wrong?" the foreman asked. "I don't know. Toby seems to have broken down." Toby tried to hide a smile. "Oh dear. Maybe Mavis could help," he offered innocently. "Not likely. You've come to a stop on the point. She's trapped." "I'll have to call for help." And so, the foreman walked off to make the call. Toby chuckled to himself once he was sure no one could see. His plan was working well. After a while, a familiar honk came from down the line as Daisy entered the quarry. Toby smiled warmly at her. She coupled up to him, and the two slowly crawled down the branch line, nose to nose. "Daisy, I'm sorry if Thomas's jokes have upset you," he offered quietly. "He doesn't know when to stop." Daisy sighed.
"Oh, it's not the jokes I'm upset with,"
she started, looking off into the sky.
"Before I came to Sodor, I would see me fitter each and every day. He would bring down his cat who would sit with me as he looked me over. She was a wonderful cat, but one day she stopped coming."
Daisy didn't need to say more as a soft tear swelled up in her eye. Toby understood. When they returned to the shed, everyone else was quiet. Before you go, driver, I do have one request," Toby asked as he was shunted into his berth by Daisy. The next morning, Thomas awoke to the sound of laughter. Some children from the village were leaning over a fence, pointing at him from the trackside. "What's so funny?" he yawned, but to his surprise, Toby and Percy just laughed as well. Even his driver and fireman were laughing at him. "What's so funny?" he repeated, growing annoyed. His driver held up a mirror, and Thomas went pale. His face was covered in paint, and painted on his face, a dog's nose and whiskers. Thomas felt very silly, but there was no time to wash it off before his first train. As he backed down into the carriage shed to collect his coaches, Daisy couldn't help but tease him.
"I'm sure he'll be barking mad after this."
She felt much better having seen this. From that day forward, Thomas was very sensitive on the subjects of cats and dogs.
What the fuck is this dickhead doing? I got damaged, guys. I need the books.